This is To Live Unrelenting, the podcast, episode number 4. It's important that a man have fun with his life. It is extremely important for a man to have fun with his life. I remember a time when I didn't really have a whole lot of fun with my life. And it wasn't terrible, because my life wasn't terrible. But life was way better when I cut loose and embraced being goofy. Today with me, I have a dear friend of mine who taught me how to be goofy at some level or another. I'm extremely to have him with me. Reed Robinson, thank you so much for coming on.
Glad to be here. I like the intro. I'm the fun guy.
Yeah, you are the fun guy.
Like, there's something I want to talk about everybody with today that, what was it? And I was like, I don't know what it's going to be.
We'll talk about serious things, but the fun is a good part of it.
You got to have
good part
fun.
of you. You do.
Life's a party. There's so much blessing that comes from living a full or fulfilled lifestyle. And I mean, everywhere you go, everybody's just humdrum. Everything's boring. You know, nothing's entertaining. There's, another day just dragging through it. It's like, come on, man. Like, everything's an adventure. Cut loose. We're being men. We're like pioneering what it looks like to like make our lives. Mm-hmm. May as well have fun and laugh along the way.
Agreed. I totally forgot. I was actually supposed to call this To Live Unrelenting, the Poddy, per Abby Gibson, but...
The Poddy?
The Poddy.
Like a podcast potty?
Yeah.
You know, I'm on another podcast, and we have a group chat called the Podfathers.
The Podfathers.
And I always want to call it the Poddy. Like, we're doing a potty this weekend, and I don't know if they're going to think I'm being like a Boston guy or like a toddler. But, like, yeah, we're doing a potty. So.
Oh, man. Reed, how old are you, and what do you do?
Oh, I am 25 still. So 25 years old, and currently right now I have been setting out on a new adventure, starting a excavation and dirt work company with my best friend and cousin, Jordan. And he and I have been thick as thieves since we were about 3 years old. And probably in this last, about a year ago, when you and I were down at the Jesus... we went to not Jesus Image, we went to Upper Room.
Yep, Upper Room.
Yep, we went down as a leadership team for just a weekend getaway, and while I was down there, just heard some really heavy prophetic words, and really felt like the Lord was calling me out of the career that I was in at the time. So I graduated from Michigan State in 2020 with a degree in ag business management, minored in agronomy, wanted to get into the ag retail sales. Really wanted to just go on to farms and talk to farmers, sell to them. I really liked the culture, I liked who they were. So I started working for a large company that was basically like a Walmart for farmers, and I was specialized in agri-intelligence. I was an agri-intelligence technician, so my job was to basically go out into fields, get the dirt samples out of the fields on a grid pattern, bring all that information, send it down to a lab. They'd send me back all the all the nutrient levels within the soil, and then from there I would build out a map across the whole field and teach farmers how to like put different nutrients in the right places to grow a better crop. So depending on if you want to grow soybeans, you want to put more potash down. If you want to grow corn, you need to put nitrogen in the right spots and get the right amount of phosphorus in the ground. And then sourcing different materials and telling the machines where to put them in an algorithm. It was a lot of fun. I mean, from the beginning of the process to pulling samples, I was out running around on quads and ATVs and side-by-sides, running through fields, and then going out and scouting corn and pulling tissue samples and figuring out everything that the plants needed to grow. I had a lot of fun with it, and then I was working with a few customers doing some sales and doing some IT stuff with tractors and John Deere and Case IH, and had a lot of fun with that, and great company, great job, but I really felt like a year ago the Lord called me to step away from that company, move back down to Lansing. I was working up in Michigan, moved back down to Lansing, and be back here. And I said, all right, Lord, I'll do that. I'll be obedient to your word, but if I move back, I need to know what I'm going to do. Like, I want to know what to do. So I knew I had it in my heart. Once again, just through a few confirming words and just knowing how I want to run things. I knew I had it in my heart that I wanted to own and operate something of my own. And so I sat down with the Lord and just took some time in prayer, and I said, God, like, what is it that you want me to do? You know, I don't want to work for a big company anymore. I don't want to jump through hoops. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of ambition, and I have a lot of drive. And I don't want to just, focus that into whatever this person wants me to do so I can make them money. I'd rather do it on my own and make my own money. And I really felt the grace from the Lord to say that he spoke to me and said, like, hey, feel free to do whatever you want. Like, I'm giving you grace to pick what you want to do. And I sat back with that and I'm like, wow, like that's a pretty blessed responsibility, you know?
Yeah.
I just felt the weight of like, I can pick whatever I want. And so I thought to myself, oh, well, I've always wanted to own an excavator. So here we are. A few months later, I got a text from my cousin Jordan, and he had some cool stuff happening in his life that he said, dude, I want to go into business with you. You know, he kind of heard what I was doing and what I was thinking. We had joked years ago about starting a company called Skiddy and Digs for the purpose of basically paying off our own excavator and skid steer. So we were able to go out and play and have our own machinery on the property. That being said, you know, a few months later, we got the LLC formed for a company called Kenneth Brothers Construction, and that is where we're at nowadays. So basically, I left my previous company in December, moved back down here in January. I now live 4 blocks down the way from Aaron, and we just recently discovered that in a couple months ago.
It was a cool discovery.
Yeah, and yeah, so here we are, marketing and learning how to build a company from the ground up. You know, buying up assets and kind of pulling our resources together to figure out what do we need, what's the best purchases, what types of tools and machinery unlock the most for us, and then, you know, who are we as a company and like what do we base our beliefs off of. Obviously, everything's very deeply rooted in the Lord, and deeply rooted in trusting Him, and so yeah, you know, learning what it looks like to operate a faith-filled and faith-driven company. And so that's where I'm at right now. I'm also pretty heavily involved in the church that I've been with the last couple of years and operating underneath a couple of ministries. And that's really how I met you, I believe, was through a youth ministry and then into a young adult ministry that we've been running with for the past 4 years. Yeah,
when you and I met, it would have been, I started dating Anna, and she required me to go to one spin night and one young adults night.
Yeah.
And I think the young adults night is where we met.
Yes. Yep. I remember meeting you. And my first memory of Aaron Valgaum.
Yep. This is a funny story.
So Aaron is just a rock of a man. Just very chiseled jaw. Everything is very, like, the man knows how to conserve energy. Every movement is intentional, and everything he does has purpose behind it, and like down to like, you know, at what rate he blinks per minute. And so when I meet Aaron, he's this, I don't know, maybe an 18-year-old, 19-year-old homeschool kid that it was very evident that he was homeschooled. And he was very much in tune with his martial arts and let it be known that he was like a very high-level martial artist. And I was like, that's super cool. And so I started asking him questions. I'm like, you know, what degree black belt are you, and what discipline of martial arts are you, and all these like questions. And so I threw it out there. I was like, so basically, like, you can take down anybody on the street, because he's talking about like, I know how to use swords and I know how to like throw javelins 200 miles.
I've never said that I can do that.
I'm just okay. Yeah. Anyways, so Aaron's like nunchucks, pulling them out of his pockets and stuff, and I'm like, this guy's super cool. And I'm like, so you can take down anybody on the street. And he says something along the lines of, well, the goal is to utilize my skills to eliminate the threat and go no further than that. And it was something along the lines of like, basically you can take my skills right up into the point of I no longer have to deal with the thing that is attacking me. And so it was really funny how he worded it. So in my mind, I'm like, so realistically, I could probably just like sucker punch this guy really quick and then hands up, be like, nope, it's over, it's done. I'm not attacking you anymore. So I like had this thing in me where I'm like, I really want to punch this dude and see what happens. Like, see how disciplined this man is. But after him explaining how he can break somebody's arm in 13 different ways using a coffee straw, I just really didn't want to test that theory. So I just kind of let it be and respected his discipline from a distance and just chose to believe that he would be able to withhold himself.
Yeah. I've since learned that most of the ways that I knew how to break people's arms would not work in most instances. I've been very thoroughly humbled since then, but I still would have given you a good run for your money, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I would have followed through on my thought process, you would have whooped my butt that day. And to this day, you know, I'm 6'4", 210 pounds. I'm not a small dude, but 9 ways to Sunday, you would whoop my butt, and I know it. I don't know how to do anything. So, yeah, that's a little bit where I come from. And since then, man, like, I've had so much stinking fun, like, with our relationship in general. You know, you first approached me probably 4 years ago. I would say, you sat down and you said, hey, I want to grow as a man. And I was just really impressed with your eagerness and your desire for growing yourself. You know, you saw something in people and you had enough humility to say, I want to go after that. And so you would sit down and talk with them. And I remember sitting down and talking with you. And like, you know, I was in youth ministry and a couple of years ahead, and I sat down with, you know, dozens and dozens of young men that all wanted to grow. And I just started asking them preliminary questions like, you know, how is your discipline with working out? How are your finances? Where are you with lust? You know, how's your relationship with the Lord? And I mean, we went right down the list, and you just checked everything off. You're like, I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and like everything's taken care of. And I'm like, you know, one of my kind of blatant out there questions, I was like, so how you doing with porn? You know, most people are struggling with it, and you know, I've had my own personal battles and my personal victories with it that's allowed me to lead a lot of young men out of that. And it's been an amazing ministry for me over the years. And you looked at me and you're like, nope, I'm good. I'm like, really? You're like, yeah, I beat it. We're good. No problem. Like, I'm focused. I was like, well, then I don't really know what we're doing here. And, you know, unbeknownst to me, it really just started this amazing friendship where, you know, we just learned how to interface with one another and just like really get a lot of good work done and challenge one another and sharpen each other. And, you know, it wasn't as much of a mentorship as it turned into like just a really, really good friendship with somebody that was like-minded in their desire for discipline and raising up young men, as well as like, let's go on adventures and do hard things because that's what makes us more skilled, more sharpened, more aware. And man, it's been one of my favorite friendships to see unravel.
Yeah, I concur. I originally went to read because I think there was some night that Jordan was just talking about like it's a good idea to find a mentor. So I was like, huh, okay.
Has Jordan been on here yet?
He's not.
No?
We'll get him here eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said it's a good idea to get a mentor. So I was like, okay, well, who here is further ahead than I am that could mentor me? And like, when I'd first gone to young adults, I'd never really encountered the Holy Spirit as this is a relationship that you have, and the Holy Spirit gives you gifts and you can perform miracles. Like never had recognized that was something that we could do. And I'd heard many times that you had prayed for people and saw them healed. So I was like, well, shoot. Okay. I want to do that.
That seems like a fun trick. Great for a Christian, laying hands on people.
Great party trick. So,
oh, scoliosis, watch this. Yeah. Anyways.
Yep. So I just was like, hey, would you be willing to mentor me? And you said yes. So even though you, from your perspective, you don't think there was a whole lot of mentorship that went on, it really was, for me, the first step into what can I do alongside the Holy Spirit? What's available to us?
Yeah.
And I definitely have a lot more fun in my life because of you. And just seeing how you can both operate in I'm an extremely high level of honor, extremely high level of discipline, but also you can be a total goofball and
100%.
Just do the most ridiculous things that I previously would never have thought to try to attempt.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a little bit of backstory on like how Reed Robinson came into the cosmos. One, God ordained it, and he said the world needs a Reed, and poof, here I am. So I come from a family. I have an older sister. I am the youngest, and that's it. It's her and I. And my dad is he is a white collar C-suite. You know, he was always a vice president or an executive of some sort. You know, very business world, business minded, very much a driver, very focused. Like his brain thinks in Excel spreadsheets. A total left brain, right? Very strong father figure and very driven in everything that he did.
Yep.
So on the other side is my mom, who is a 5'9", farm-raised, corn-fed hairdresser, who is got to be probably one of the most like hilarious human beings you've ever met. I mean, everything that comes out of her mouth is just like bonkers, crazy, super fun. She's always down for just party and entertainment. And so I get a lot of that creativity and like just fun and just joy from life, and everything is just an adventure from her, because I'm very much, I relate to her all the time. We spend a lot of time together on the farm. I grew up working on horse farms and ranches, and she always just had me out running around the property and doing all sorts of fun stuff. And then my dad was obviously the strong father figure and the disciplinary in the house, but he taught me how to work, and he gave me identity, and he showed me who I was. And so my mom, like this crazy hairdresser, and my dad, this like C-suite executive, like came together and just made this combination of like, all right, we can get work done and then simultaneously like have just a great time doing it, because like life truly is a blessing. And the joy of the Lord when it comes on you is, you know, it's undeniable, and you can't help but have fun in everything you're doing. So that's kind of the whirlwind that brought me together. And then my sister, of course, is just this like adorable little sweetheart of a gal. Like, I don't want to say she's the antithesis of me, but she's just this little sweetie. Like, she got all the cute genes and all the fun genes and like the soft-hearted. I mean, she's just a big lover. Everybody that meets her is just like overwhelmed with joy for how much she loves them. And then I'm just like this like whirling dervish of just fun over on the other side. So, but obviously when you're stepping into roles of leadership, and when you're growing in faith with the Lord, and you're deepening your relationship with Him, and, you know, you're growing as a professional in your career or your life, it's like, you know, you can't be chaotic, right? It started to become very apparent to me. I was like, okay, men have to lead, and they have to be foundational for their wives and their households and their ministries, you know, the people around them. And everything can't just be haphazard. So it's extremely important for us to dial in on the things that are important and really take ownership and be serious about them. Buckle down, have some discipline, because in discipline there is freedom. That's my favorite Jocko Willink quote ever. Extreme Ownership is one of the best books I've ever read. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, one of the best things that I say in there is, in discipline there's freedom. So if I give myself the discipline to have boundaries around certain things, you know, I can freely operate within that realm and in that space and maximize the utility I get out of it. And just learning how to model those two things is, I think, something that has been a lot of fun for me and very entertaining for me over the years.
Yeah. Reed, how did you come to follow the Lord?
Man, I was raised up in a Christian household. I mean, I've always been, from the day one, I remember somewhere around 4 years old, you know, quote unquote, giving my life to the Lord. Like, I knew Jesus was real. I remember going to church as a young kid. I remember throwing up carrots in like third grade at like Bible school. I have a very vivid memory of that. It was orange. I don't remember, but like that was some of the earlier days from like that world, right? You have a few like core memories from like early on, but I remember being in church and throwing up this orange carrot stuff. So I was always in church. Born out in Minnesota, raised in there till I was 5. Then we moved back to Michigan, where my family is all originally from. And the Lord called my family back to Michigan. My dad quit his job, moved back here, and just remained faithful to what the Lord was doing. I would say, let's see, we went to this awesome church down on the south side of Lansing called Trinity. And it's where my mom and dad met, where they were raised up. And we went there for years, and it was such a great spot. They had this this youth ministry called Impact, which I was pretty heavily involved in. And then into high school, they had a ministry called Crosswalk, which was for high schoolers, freshman to senior. And there's probably about 60 or 70 people that would meet there on a weekly basis. And I had this awesome youth minister called DJ Akers. His name was DJ Akers. And, he really just poured into me and seeded into me. And just all the craziness that people kind of pushed off to the side, he directed it and he loved on it. And he just poured into me. And I had these leadership qualities that my parents were developing into me, or that they saw in me that they developed. And, he kind of took hold of that and started to help shape me. So early on in my Christian walk, I had all the morals figured out. I knew what the word said. I had all the concepts and ideas figured out. Don't swear and don't drink and don't sleep with girls and don't watch porn and keep your eyes off of things that were unholy. And just I had the idea of Christianity figured out really well. And I was super disciplined. I was very convicted. I'll say that. I didn't want to do anything that would upset the Lord because I think it was ninth grade. Somewhere around ninth grade, I believe I got filled with the Holy Spirit. My parents, when we moved back to Michigan, my mom went through this season where she was battling depression really heavily and struggling with it. And the only time that she could get free from the weight of that is when she would spend time with the Lord in prayer. And in that season of life, she got filled with the Holy Ghost. And started to learn what it looked like to live a spirit-led life. And so I would watch her in those moments because I'm watching my mom at 6 or 7 years old trying to figure out, why is mom always in her closet? Why is she always crying? Why is she always struggling? I didn't have the concept to put two and two together of what was happening. But I would spend time with her in those moments and I would start to experience who the Holy Spirit was. So I don't remember a definitive moment where it's boom, hands got laid on me and I was spirit filled. But I remember, I'm pretty sure I was 9 years old. And I remember praying in tongues for the first time. No, it was at my buddy's church, Life Changers. A guy named Andy, who I don't know where he's at nowadays. But he laid hands on me to get me filled with the Holy Spirit and pray in tongues for the first time. And I did. It was awesome. And so I remember that being celebrated. And that summer that I had gotten spirit filled, I just remember the conviction of the Holy Spirit for the first time. And I'd be laying there in bed at night just bawling my eyes out, and my mom's like, "What's going on?" And I would just say I stole a tomato out of Tom's backyard, and one time I accidentally said the D word, and I feel like I did this wrong and did this wrong. And my mom I watched Bruce Almighty and that had a swear word in it. And I just had all these young 9-year-old convictions of things that I knew I had done wrong that I wasn't confessing. And my mom would sit with me and talk me through them and, well, have you sought forgiveness from the Lord? And, have you repented? And it's okay. And here's the right decisions to make, right? So that was my formative years of understanding conviction with the Holy Spirit. And then I remember into high school, starting to figure out what it looked like to own my relationship with the Lord became more and more apparent as you age and get older. I started going to a public school, had to learn what it was like to fend for my own faith now and defend the gospel, and how not to conform to what everybody's doing around me. So, I was able to go to parties and hang out with people and stay sober the whole time, not drink anything, not smoke anything. I never dated in high school because I didn't really see a point, and I knew that dating was for the purpose of getting married, and I didn't see anybody worth getting married to, so I just didn't date anybody. But in that time, developed a porn issue and started to struggle with that. Had some buddies that were on the same path as me, they had a lot of their ducks in the row, but they had a couple key things that they were battling. So developed some just really good brotherhood and relationship with some guys and accountability with those guys to help me get free from that. And then all the while it was just kind of well, if that area of my life is out of whack, at least I'm still not swearing and I'm not smoking and I'm not drinking, and at least I can say I'm a good person, right? Just kind of had that mentality with my walk with Jesus, well, I'm really not saying that much, still heavily involved in youth ministry, bringing friends from school every week. We'd go out on Sunday nights and go partied up at Crosswalk, and I was just getting wrecked by the Holy Spirit, time in and time again, just spending time in His presence. But still learning how do I manage some of these battles and issues and I don't want to say pressures from life, but how do I really own my relationship with the Lord? Okay. So it all kind of boiled down to that season of life from like senior year of high school to freshman and sophomore year of college, where I didn't really take my relationship with the Lord very seriously because I knew once I did, I was like, it's not going to be fun anymore. Like, I'm going to have to follow all these rules really strictly. And it's like everything is serious. You know, it's like I really struggled with this idea of like, well, I'm not allowed to live the way that I want to live. And, you know, to a degree that was true, but I thought it was going to be this like bondage that I was going to have to go into. I was like, I just want to be free. I just want to do whatever I want. So I think it was my freshman or sophomore year of college, got in a relationship with a gal that I looked really good on paper, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing. You know, like I looked like the good Christian boy, you know, hard worker, but didn't really have any like passion and drive in life other than just like, well, I'm a really good worker and I'm going to school to go get this business degree. And all the while, it's just like I was either like extremely excited about everything all the time or I was like really upset. I didn't have any emotional IQ. And that's because like I was lacking a really deep, intimate relationship with the Lord. I didn't know what my identity was. And I was kind of running from the conviction of, you know, dealing with this porn issue that I was like on and off with now, and then dating this girl and feeling the struggles with that. And like, you know, then lo and behold, like this girl and I started getting involved sexually in like ungood ways. And so like, I just felt like I was failing at everything. I was like, I'm angry all the time. I don't know how to deal with any of my emotions. I'm leading this girl down terrible paths and I'm failing her. But I wore, like, I had a purity ring that I wore. And I was like hanging on to that. I'm like, well, at least I haven't like, you know, gone all the way and at least I have some moral still and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, through all leading a terrible relationship and like kind of denying my time with the Lord, you know, going to church, but not really having like a deep, intimate relationship with him. I was just going through the motions is what I was doing. So I'm a sophomore in college, end up like sleeping with this girl and just completely hitting like I just hit the rock bottom at that point. Cause I'm like, well, I sat on my cousin's front porch and I was sitting there with him. He's my best friend, my accountability partner, everything. He was like the guy that I went to. I sat on his front porch and I handed him my purity ring. I was like, I can't wear this anymore. And I just started like bawling because I'm like, I don't know who I am. I feel so distant from the Lord. Nothing I do is satisfying. And everything that I said I stood for, I've knocked down. I'm like, I'm really in a bad way right now. And he had just had that similar thing happen to him about a month and a half earlier. You know, not like similar circumstances, but he had come to that point break, like that Jesus moment where he's just like, oh my gosh, I've been running from the Lord and I need to give everything over to him. And so, you know, he gave me a good little licking. Like, he said like, yep, you screwed up. You shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. You've been running from him. He goes, I tried to warn you about this. But that doesn't matter now because like it's already happened. And it goes, what you do from this point forward will dictate how you lead the rest of your life. And so in that, he recommended a couple people that I come under mentorship of. And I picked 3 or 4 guys that really, I came to them. I said, hey, I'm struggling, I'm broken, I'm hurting, and I don't know what to do. Here's the things that I see in you that I like, that I want, and I'm willing to submit my authority to you. You say something and I'll do it. And like I'm serious, like probably 6 months, my whole life got whittled down to about 1.5 friends. Like it was like my cousins and a buddy that I would sometimes hang out with, but he just got married, so he was like in and out of the picture all the time. Great guy, we're good friends now, still co-workers, and I love him to death. But it whittled down to my cousin Jordan. Him and I were just like in this moment where we had like 3 or 4 mentors in our life that literally had complete control of everything we did. Finances, time, sleep schedule, you know, Sunday mornings with the Lord, time that we spent with Jesus, getting our homework done. Everything was like dictated by what they said. And slowly over time, as we executed well and as we built habit and discipline in our lives, they would relinquish stuff back over to us. And we kind of begin to gain control of like, you know, our equilibrium. We started to build this like terra firma where we're like, okay, we can build a good sleep schedule now, and we know how to operate our finances well, and we we have a really good like disciplined time with the Lord. You know, we were in church every Sunday, every Wednesday night we were in prayer gatherings, and like we were in the Word every day. In that process, you know, because I had no other options. I was like, I've tried everything. In that process of like becoming extremely disciplined and just like cracking down on everything in life, I found out that like I fell in love with Jesus. Like I met Jesus and I formed a relationship with him. I was like, oh my gosh. You know, I had my come to Jesus moment. I fell in love with this man that calls me his bride and that has like done all this stuff for me. And I truly just deeply fell in love with him. And all of a sudden I started experiencing all this freedom and this weight lifted off of me, and I wasn't angry and I wasn't like snapping at people anymore. I had this just genuine love and excitement for life. And like for the first time ever, what I thought was going to be this like bondage to a life of discipline and bummer turned into this life of like discipline and freedom and fun and joy. And like I've never had more fun and never had a bigger adventure in my life than when I said, yes, Jesus, you can have everything. I surrender to you.
How old were you when that happened?
21 and a half.
So about 4 years ago then?
Yeah. Yep. I think it's 5 years ago now, because I was 21 when everything hit the fan. And I'm going to be 26 like next week or something. I'm getting old. I already had my quarter life crisis, grew a beard, shaved my head. Yeah, looking at buying a Corvette or an excavator. I don't know. We'll see which one makes me more money.
You already own the Corvette, or not the Corvette, the excavator, don't you?
Working on the excavator right now, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. But, yeah, that's, it's been about 5 years now where I've learned the difference between what religion and Christianity looks like and having a relationship with Jesus. And, you know, all of a sudden this filling of the Holy Spirit that I had started to become active, right? Like I started spending time with the Lord and stoking up his presence in my life and listening very closely to him and basically just saying yes. I'm like, all right, Lord, anything you want. Yes, I'm in. I'll do it today. Got involved on a couple ministry teams, and one of the ministry teams was underneath my Uncle Troy, who led up a healing ministry team at Mount Hope Church. And so I started just like, you know, going to every service that he did, listening to how people prayed over people. I started listening to Todd White like nonstop and would pray over people just like, I don't want to say like mimicking him, but basically just like I would pray how he prayed over people. And, you know, all of a sudden I just started seeing people get healed. You know, I'd lay hands on them and just pray with authority and preach what the word and the Bible said over them. And, you know, their back would straighten out and their back pain would go away, or their shoulder would come back into place, or their leg would grow out, or, you know, the hole in the bottom of their foot from the nail they stepped on earlier that day would disappear. You know, just I started seeing just these miracles happen when I prayed over people. And it was all just because I was like, Lord, I'm fixated and submitted to you, and I believe what your word says. And if that's what your word says, then by golly, it's going to happen when I pray. And so I just kind of got like dumb faith for things. I was like, oh yeah, you're back. That's easy. We can heal that. And they're like, I've been in pain for 13 years. I'm like, no problem. Like, watch how good my God is. And you know, I started getting like some prophetic words over people where like they'd come walking up to me. I'd be talking with them, and like, you know, either like I'd hear the Lord speak, or I'd feel him move and stir in my stomach, or I'd recognize them. I'd be like, hey, do I know you? And they're like, no. And I'd run through the list of, I love networking, so I know a lot of people, and I love just making connections within my community. And I'd exhaust the entire list of people that I knew that I thought I knew them from. And they're like, no, I don't know it. I was like, well, then I think I'm supposed to pray for you. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, do you have an issue with your ankle from like a soccer injury when you were 18? They're like, yeah. It's like, oh, cool. Well, can I pray for you? And then we'd pray for him, and like the Lord would heal him, and it was just so exciting, you know, getting these opportunities that like God just started using me when I said yes to him. And the more I said yes, the more we would do, and it became a really entertaining lifestyle where all of a sudden it was almost like a game where it's like, all right, God, what are you going to do today? What's next? Where are we going to go? And so yeah, that's kind of how I like got started into Jesus, and then met him like 18 years later for real. And yeah, dude, I mean, it's been the most exciting lifestyle and adventure I've ever lived.
What would you say to the people who think that church is really boring, or that Jesus is really boring?
Stop going to an Orthodox church. No, so let me preface one thing. As far as denominations go, like, I love to joke about all the denominations. I think like church humor is the funniest thing ever. I like cracking jokes is my favorite thing, and all good jokes have a hint of truth in them. Mm-hmm. So I will crack jokes about the denomination, but to set the foundation, I love the church as Christ's bride. You know, I don't care what denomination you are, Reformed, Baptist, Catholic, Greek Orthodox, whatever it is. It's like, I just have to love you, because if you call Jesus your savior, it's like, then you're the bride and I have to love you. And I rip on the people I love the most. So for the people that think it's boring, oh my gosh, dude, that was totally me. I was like, I'm not doing this Christian thing like all out. It's going to be too boring. Like, what do you tell me? I'm not allowed to, I don't even know. I just wanted to be like, I just didn't want to have discipline. Like, I wanted to do whatever I wanted, you know, and not be quote unquote tied down to all these rules. I wanted to be able to have a beer if I wanted to have a beer. I wanted to be able to smoke a cigar if I wanted to smoke a cigar. I wanted to be able to say the S word sometimes because, oh well, you know. And I was starting to do that at like a younger age. I was like, you know, I do these things because it's like, well, I just wanted to have the freedom, and I didn't want to be tied down to these laws that I didn't think mattered. Then when I like really became in love with Jesus, you know, I recognized those things aren't rules to make me look better or make me feel better about who I was. It's like, those were things that really pleased my God. And when I said, God, you can have everything in my life, that means you can have my tongue, you can have my desires, my passions, my wants, you can have my finances, you can have my whole future. Like, you say, like, have you given your life to the Lord? You know, we say that like so nonchalant, like, oh, have you given your life to Jesus? It's like, oh yeah, one time I prayed a prayer. That's what everybody thinks, right? But it's like, no, have you given your life to him? Like, have you laid everything down before him and said, I surrender this to you? Once I realized the difference between those two things, and that like, oh, hey, you know, if I don't drink, my life becomes simpler because I'm always in control mentally. And I'm never getting caught in situations where, oh, maybe I had a couple too many beers and I'm going to go drive home. But like, I'll probably be fine. All of a sudden I'm in jail because I got a DUI. The financial ties to it, the public appearance of it. It's like, there's so much more weight that bogs you down when you start doing those things. So it's like, hey God, I'd much rather just give that desire up and surrender it to you, because you say I'll be better off for it, and it's true. You know, and my lifestyle becomes more simplified, and I have less things to bog down my mental capacity, so I can spend more time focusing on you. I was like, if that pleases you, then I want to do that. And it's like, if you haven't been like zapped by the Holy Spirit either, like if you haven't had like a good like whooping by him when you like get in the middle of a worship service and get schwacked, like there's no high or no drug that compares to that, right? Like I was never into like street drugs. I never smoked. I never like did cocaine. I never did I've never been drunk off of alcohol before, just because I don't have a like heavy desire for it, as well as I am aware enough that my addictive personality would like take things way overboard. I had enough conviction to avoid those things, but it's like, you know, I've shattered my leg before and been on painkillers, and I've done this, and I've had the narcotics that the doctors say are good for you or whatever, like that bull crap is. Like, you know, I've been like crazy buzzed off of nicotine, and like as much temporary satisfaction as those things offer, it's like when you get in the presence of God and he absolutely annihilates you with his love. When he annihilates you with his love, you just come off of it and it's like, okay, there's no hangover. I'm enamored for like the next 5 days. In the moment, I'm like, just jittering and shaking and trembling before how good he is. And I'm like, there is no greater drug than this. Never done cocaine, but I'm pretty sure it's similar. Right? And, you know, you have these opportunities and these moments, and it's like, I'm doing all this with a clean conscience, right?
Clean conscience and a sober mind.
Oh my gosh. People discount that, like, you know, they talk about being drunk like it's this fun thing, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like, how is your conscience not just so muddled up and dirty and broken? And it's like, they do all these things and they just keep pushing off this conviction and this, like, trying to protect their consciousness. But it's like, you know, it wears on them all the time because you look at them in their eyes and you can see it. You know, you see the stuff that they're battling in the back of their head. And, man, dude, like, I start thinking about, I've done all of my fun activities. I've jumped off of all the cliffs that I've wanted and built the rope swings and gone on the, like, I've done everything I could possibly think that well, I guess not everything. There's a lot of things that I want to do yet. I think it'd be fun to go bungee jumping and skydiving, scuba diving. But, like, I do all the things that I really want to do, and I push the boundaries of, like, what's allowable. You know, I'm not out here, like, hardcore breaking the law. But I'm doing enough to get a really good taste of adrenaline, right? It's like, I've had supercars up to 180 miles an hour. Is that legal? No. Is that a sin? Arguably. But, like, you gotta do it, right? Like, it's all about, like, finding the limits of, like, what's possible. But, like, I've done it all with this, like, clean conscience, and I've done it all sober. Like, we look at each other all the time just laughing, like, dude, we're a hoot and a half, and we do it all without beer. Yep. I don't know if that makes us, like, more fun or dumber because we do it sober. But I think it makes us a little more ballsy. Like,
true story.
People are always talking like, oh, I need a couple drinks in order to loosen up and be myself. I'm like, I don't need anything to be myself. You know, when I met Jesus and he told me who I was, and he gave me identity and gave me purpose and source and reason, it's like, I'm just free to operate in that space, right? It's like we were talking about in discipline, there's freedom. Okay, so if you don't know who you are and you're struggling, well, I identify as a hard worker, I identify as a drinker, I identify as an executive, a CEO, a leader, an activist, whatever it is. It's like, you have to fit into that mold, right? And you have to, like, you know, step up to what that is. And, you know, there's a lot of things that, like, people put on you externally to be who that is. But, like, when you hear from the Lord and he says, hey, I designed you to be fearless, I've designed you to be free, I've designed you to be a leader, I've designed you to own every, like, space of ground that you step on, I've designed you to be a connector of people, I've designed you to, like, live in the fullness of my presence. Okay, well, if that's who you made me to be, then I just have to, like, live up to that, right? And it's like, those things are all inherently inside of me. So I just have to maximize that identity that you've given me. And I feel full when I do it. I don't feel like a fraud when I operate how the Lord's told me how I operate. And that has been the most fun way to live life. Like, we talk about, like, a clean conscience, and we talk about discipline. It's like, well, if I can be disciplined enough to establish some boundaries in my life so I'm not financially a mess and I'm not emotionally a mess, but it allows me to, like, get all of that confusion and that time-consuming daily tasks out of the way, so I can focus on my presence, and, like, I can focus on my time with God, and, like, have him speak into my identity and me return that back into, like, glorification of his kingdom. It's like, that's what I'm designed to do. I'm designed to, like, operate exactly how he built me to operate and worship him. So that is a load of fun. It really is. Your mind space gets so much clearer, and your head stops asking all the questions of, like, well, why am I not doing this, or who am I, or where am I going, what am I supposed to be doing? It's like, you get all those answers when you get before him on your knees and cry out to him, and he tells you who you are and why he made you, and that you have value and purpose, and you're like, oh, okay, like, the person that designed me said that, so all I have to do is be that. And I'm really good at it because I'm the only one on earth that can do it. And that's, like, it's a freeing thought. And and you get your little playbook, and you get your little, like, I'm allowed to, like, I'm not going to be, man, I don't even know, like, what's something that I'm not, you know? I'm not going to be the humdrum guy. Like, that's just not who I am. My brain is just constantly going on a level. It's like, I'm not allowed to be that guy. I'm not allowed to be the guy that just, like, is, everything is just steady and bland and plain. It's like, I go crazy, you know? I'm not going to be the 9-to-5 office guy that just wants to sit down and compute numbers all day long. God bless that man that the Lord has designed to be like that. But it's like, God's designed me to just operate in all these different capacities and places that I have to step into. Otherwise, I'll feel unfulfilled. You know? That's a lot of rabbit trails. My brain thinks I'm like, yeah, I'm all over the place, but like it all kind of coincides. I hope there's a general theme in that talks about, like, you know, when you operate in the identity that the Lord's given you, there's so much freedom and joy and peace that comes from that. Mm-hmm. And it allows you to just live your life to the fullest. You never feel like you're duping yourself or trying to be something that you're not, or like failing to meet the expectation that everybody's put on you, because it's like, it's not about what they put on you, it's about what the Lord's required of you.
Yeah, all the rabbit trails connected. You did fine.
Wonderful, thank God.
You kind of answered one of the questions that I was going to ask, because you mentioned the rules, right?
Yes.
And how the rules seem really restrictive. Mm-hmm. But it's like they're there for your safety. The rules don't exist in a vacuum.
No.
Or they don't exist to be arbitrary. They exist because the stuff that it's a wall that keeps out the invaders. Mm-hmm. It's a wall that keeps out things that would steal, kill, and destroy.
Yes. Yeah. And everybody, like, gets down on rules. One, because, yeah, there are some bad rules in the world that just don't fly, you know? But, like, easiest example, right? Lines on a road. You know, first of all, you have a road, which gives you the ability and the opportunity to go do something. Well, have you ever, like, watched the videos of cars in India at stoplights?
Yes.
It's absolute chaos, and it's so inefficient, and it doesn't, like, allow the infrastructure, the design of how things are supposed to work to operate at its fullest capacity. Everybody just disregards it, and they're going when lights are red, and they're all just, like, jammed up at this intersection. Nobody really cares about what side of the road to be about. There's general rules that kind of, like, you know, everybody kind of generally figures out a path to go along that society kind of just lets operate when things freely move, right? Like, there's a standard flow of how things go, but it still is chaotic. Now, when you think about the lines of a road, like, if there's somebody that just wants to freely operate and do whatever they want in life, and they're swerving all back and forth across the road, you know, driving 180 mile an hour in a McLaren like an idiot, like, that person is then a threat to everybody else around them, as well as not being productive for the rest of society or themselves. They might be having a lot of fun, but it's inherently putting risk on their life as well as the other people around them. So they do not fit well within that society, as well as, like, they're not going to be productive for themselves either. They might get somewhere very fast. They might do something very quickly, but it's like, it's not going to benefit the whole. So same thing with, like, any sports game, right? There's rules, and it allows us to enjoy the sport more and, like, accomplish the goal of the sport more effectively. So rules are a standard in life because it's a thing that it's a principle of heaven. Like, the kingdom of heaven has said rules are good, and when they're enforced and followed and done well and created well, they allow things to operate beautifully. That's no different from your personal life. If I say, hey, I'm going to have a rule to not eat sugar, or I'm going to have a rule to work out once a day, or I'm going to have a rule to read 10 pages in a book, whatever it is, it's like, if you make that a consistent thing, well, some people say, like, I don't want to be tied down to that. I want to be able to eat whatever I want, and I want to be able to you know, have the free time to relax, or, you know, maybe I don't want to read a book. I'd rather just watch YouTube. Not saying, I don't even want to go down that path, but when you follow them well, you get to your goals a lot quicker, and you can map out a path a lot sooner, and you can understand what you are and are not allowed to do in other areas of life to get to a goal that is long-term, right? Because a lot of people that live their lives without rules-ish, like they don't have a lot of discipline in life, they don't achieve long-term goals that well. Short-term, they might, it's not hard to generate a little bit of cash to go on a vacation or get just fit enough for swimsuit season or wherever it is. But long-term, they're like, their health starts to diminish, and they don't meet financial goals, and they can't support a family, and they can't afford to buy a house, or they can't, afford to have a lifestyle that they desired because they compromised early on. And that's incredibly unfortunate because everybody has these like lofty dreams, and they're continually failing them because they have short-term vision and they have short-term discipline or a lack of discipline or no discipline at all. And then you have this society that thinks, well, we can't accomplish anything. Everything's against us. I never get where I want to be. Like, it's no wonder that depression and anxiety are through the roof because you have a bunch of people just failing over and over again and they're not happy with what they're doing in life. But the people that I see that are filled with the most joy and the most satisfied are the ones that are grinding, that have discipline, that have habits, that have enough grit and gur in them to say, no, I'm going to wake up at a good time in the morning and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to go get in the cold plunge and I'm going to, read the book. It doesn't have to be physical fitness or like intense stuff. It's like, hey, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to spend time with the Lord and be in his presence. Or I'm going to make sure I put $100 a week away in savings. Simple things that help get you to your goals, and it's like that's all it is. Those are rules. They build structure. Rules are the infrastructure of life that help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
What was the question?
It wasn't even a question.
No.
I was just making a comment.
Yeah. And did you ever have an issue, or did you ever have a point in your life where you're like, I need to be more disciplined, or was it just always built into you? Because you're one of the more disciplined people I know.
There was definitely a period of time. I mean, the circumstances in which I grew up in kind of gave me that development because I was homeschooled my whole life.
Obviously.
So, yeah, obviously homeschooled. But the thing about being homeschooled was the way that my parents ran it was essentially this. As soon as you are done with your chores and as soon as you're done with your school and you've done it well, you can't just do whatever.
Right.
If you've done it well and you can show you've done it well, the rest of the day is yours. And you can go play on the computer, you can go watch television, you can go play with your friends, you can go do whatever you want after you've done the work.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, okay. So I woke up at 6 in the morning, every single morning.
At 4 years old, and I did my ABCs.
Yeah. And I literally woke up at 6 in the morning, did all my chores, and then I did all of my school to the best of my ability without my mother being awake to help me with some stuff. And then she would wake up and then we'd do the rest of it, eat breakfast. By 12 o'clock, almost every single day of my childhood and high school years, the rest of the day was mine after 12 o'clock because I got it all done.
Beautiful.
And so that's...
Are you naturally an early riser?
Not so much anymore, but that's because I got married to a night owl, so I keep staying up later and later, and it's terrible.
9:30. Kind of late.
I know.
No, that's coming from a night owl that hates mornings. Yeah. But
anyway,
I'm curious.
Otherwise, I would have been a much earlier riser, but
Early.
But yeah, that's set the framework for most of my life. And there are areas that I've recognized that I needed more discipline in, and I just worked at it. But I did that every day for 18 years.
One thing that I love about you is because you are just really good at seeing a need or seeing something that's lacking in your life, and you're good at just executing, getting it done. And it sounds like that's because you built the habit of, well, I got to wake up at this time and I got to go get this, and this done. And you had a clear objective always. You've always been an objective and an executor, And once again, one of my favorite things about you is I remember when we first started doing like intense worship nights at Young Adults.
Yep.
Our group that met every Thursday night at 7:00, we'd have these worship nights that would start at 7:30 and we'd go to like 10:30. And it was like a 3-hour long like grind of just crying out to God and worshiping and praising. And our pastor Jordan, he was like, look, we are going to be people that celebrate the Lord undignified. And Aaron, like the first worship night I remember seeing Aaron, he was sitting in a karate pose with his hands on his legs, out in front of him. He was like kneeled down and his back was like perfectly arched and like every duck was in a row. Like I think all of his muscles were aligned. And I was like,
not the muscles, the bones were aligned.
The bones were aligned, yeah. Yeah. He goes, I think my third rib is out. Let me just think that back into place. Okay. So, Jordan, like Aaron comes on leadership team because obviously he's just a rock star. He loves the Lord. He's very passionate about seeing people like being raised up in ministry and like growing their relationship with Jesus. He's very, very like leadership mentality. Great person to have on your like any leadership team or any organization that you're part of. Aaron will execute. Jordan goes, we're going to be people that like celebrate and are undignified by the Lord. Like we're going to dance. And all of us are like, okay. Like, what does that look like? And Jordan led the way. Like, Jordan's just out there, basically moshing before the Lord. Mm-hmm. And, he used the scripture where David brings the Ark of the Covenant back into Jerusalem, and he worships in his underwear the entire way. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's going to be us. Now, obviously, we kept our clothes on, but Aaron went from this everything was upright to childlike giddy dancing before the Lord. And I can almost assure you, without actually being in his body, that he began doing it uncomfortably. But all of a sudden, Aaron was leading the way in he's the guy that dances, right? Mm-hmm. He's the one that dances like a child before the Lord. And actually, I was sitting there today. We just had a worship night last night, and I was sitting with some out of town friends. And somebody said, "Hey, who's that guy across the way that was dancing so crazy?" I was like, "That's BG." She's like, "What?" I was like, "That's BG. This is how he is, man." And once again, you saw an objective, and outside of what you wanted, outside of what you thought was comfortable and right.
It was so uncomfortable.
But what's it like now?
It's amazing. I'm so glad that I do it.
I mean, your legs are flying everywhere. You're jumping and hooting and hollering and spinning. And it's beautiful. And when you do it, man, it opens up this can of worms for everybody else, and it makes them feel like, well, if he's doing that hard, I can at least do half as much of that and still be pretty good, right?
Yep.
And so you'll see people around you one at a time start jumping around and dancing and spinning and you're just leading them in that moment, right? In that sphere, you got a 10-foot circle around you. That those people begin to move and worship like you do. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
I concur.
And offering up that kind of worship to God is there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's you're giving everything up. You're giving your dignity in that moment. Most people won't give their dignity. They'll hang on to that. Mm-hmm. And that's beautiful. It took me a really long time to figure out how to get there. Versus just jumping up and down to jumping back and forth, whatever it is, right? How can I offer a little bit more to you, God? Yeah. What's uncomfortable? And you do that so incredibly well.
Thank you. When we sat down for that first time talking about you mentoring me, one of the things that really stuck with me was you were just laying down, this is what I'm expecting from you, this is what you can expect from me. One of the things that you said to me was, I will never shame you. And that really stuck with me. Not because I had any worries about that, but just that you wouldn't judge me for whatever I brought to you.
Yeah.
And ever since you've done that, every time I've mentored somebody, I have said the same thing. I will not shame you.
I didn't know that.
Say again?
I said I didn't know that. It's awesome.
Yeah. Why? What's the balance there? Because we know that in the scriptures, Jesus says, by the measure with which you judge, you will also be judged. But also at the same time, Jordan has talked to us about we have to be able to make judgments.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to call out sin where we see it. How do we balance that really well?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. Our culture is so geared around well, you can't judge me. You can't tell me what's right and what's wrong. It's all subjective to my truth, right? Well, that's bullcrap. There's truth. There's the truth. There's not a truth, the truth, and my truth. It's there's truth. It's rooted and founded in the Bible. All of it's right there. It's all laid out. And so, when you have an organization like a church and fellow believers around you that you're doing ministry with, there's a level of truth that you guys have all agreed to operate underneath, right? Or the level of truth that you've all agreed to operate underneath. And it's all, this is where denominations start getting different, but we're all underneath an Assemblies of God church, and we're underneath the authority of one person within that church, right? That says this, and this is how I believe the scripture is interpreted. This is what's right and wrong. And we have all subscribed to that, right? We've all said, yep, that's the truth. We're following that. There is no issue with me walking up to somebody that's in the church, that says they're a Christian and subscribe to surrendering their life to Jesus. And if they're doing something that I see is directly violating what they have portrayed themselves to believe, I have the boundaries to be able to call them out. As a brother, or as a brother to a brother or brother to a sister, I can say, hey, you said this at one point, and I'm holding you accountable to this. And I'm judging not based off of what I believe is right and wrong, but what the word says is right and wrong. And you said that if you're on board with it, then you're on board with it. Which also you signed over the right for me to be able to call you out on it. Okay? That doesn't always work very well. Because sometimes you'll say something to somebody and they just go off on you. You're like, okay. Where that's when I believe, you can't be that one person that just runs around the church and calls everybody out for their crap, right? You can't calls everybody out for their sin and they're hidden this and they're hidden that. That's the role of the pastor, I believe. He oversees the flock and he can, inherently, because he has authority over somebody, he can call them out. I'll do it with people that I have emotional and relational equity built up with. Aaron, I know that you would come to me at any time and I can go to you at any time and say, hey, I've been noticing this lately and here's the hard truth and I just want to give you a heads up. And this is something that you should pay attention to. Something that you should correct. And you know that when I come to you like that, or you come to me like that, your end goal for me is not anything less than good. Anything less than excellent, or to benefit me, right?
Yeah.
I know that you have a personal vision, or you have a vision for me that you think is either being met or not met, right? So I can trust what you have to say. So in a scenario like that, where you come to me and say, I would like to be mentored by you, that person is saying, okay, I'm giving you authority and a right in my life to call me out on things and to speak into things and to give truth, because you have something and you have truth that I desire, that I want to be in line with, right? And what I hear is okay, you just gave me the right to call you out on stuff. You gave me the right and the ability to not necessarily judge you and call you a good and bad person. It's not for me to say, you're going to heaven or hell on that. But as much as saying hey, that does not line up with truth. And that will destroy you, right? And so that's where I draw the line. Sure, you can be that person. You're not necessarily wrong when you're the person that says, hey, if you keep doing that, you keep living that lifestyle and live unsurrendered to Jesus, you're going to hell. That's not wrong. It's truth. There's zero grace in that. And I've learned more lately about delivering truth with a portion of grace, with in this basket of like, I love you, right? Like, I deeply care about you and I love you, so I want you to have all of this like beneficial sustenance for your life that's packaged up in a little bit of pain because it calls out something that you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
It's a tough line to walk, but it's definitely easier to do when you can also look at that buddy or that person and say, yeah, you're my buddy, you're my friend, and I care about you. It's easier delivered, and some people you just don't have that jurisdiction for. Mm-hmm. You know, I wouldn't walk up to the random Susan or Doug at church and be like, you know, I saw you drinking this weekend, or I saw you like snap on somebody. That's wrong. It's like, you know, there's somebody else in their life that's close enough to them that is going to call them out on that. Mm-hmm. It's like, that might not be my role, or that's the role of the pastor. Now for the unbeliever, it's like, you know, I can't hold them to my standard. They haven't said yes to it. And so I know what the truth is, and I can help lovingly inform them and share the gospel with them, the good news of what it means to be in love and saved by Jesus and covered by his blood. But it's not for me to say, you're living life wrong, because they haven't signed up for it, you know? And I could say like, hey, you're living a life that is inferior to what's out there. You know, you're living a life that, you know, is destroying you, unfortunately, and you don't know it. But my God is so good, and he's so loving and so great, and he did so much for you that he can save you from it. And I'm allowed to do that. And with that comes an awesome list of truth.
Yeah. Usually when I think about saying that I'm not going to shame you in a mentorship setting, I usually think like, I will call you out on stuff that you should be doing better. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm going to deliver it in a loving package. And at the same time, I'm not going to use it to attack you.
Right.
I'm not going to use it to attack you.
Well, I think about like shaming people. It's like, that's condemning them. It's like, you did so bad. That's wrong. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And it's like, I was there. That doesn't help anything. Mm-hmm. You know, if I had somebody that came to me and they're like, hey, you know, I slept with my girlfriend last night. Like, well, okay, how's that make you feel? Like, where are you at? Where's your headspace at? Well, I feel like this, and I feel gross. Like, you know that the Bible says, like, you know, don't do that, right? Yeah, okay. Why'd you do it? Well, okay. I'm like, I already know all the answers. I'm asking them to help them realize, like, where they're at, right? Because I've been there. I'm like, I can't shame you, because, like, if I would have come to my cousin and he would be like, dude, I can't believe how dumb you are. I can't believe that you would have done something like that. Like, there's no hope for you. You're so screwed. It's like, that doesn't help anybody. Mm-hmm. But what you have is somebody that's, like, genuinely hurting, genuinely convicted, very confused, in a very vulnerable and hard spot. And they come in and they say, I'm really even nervous to say anything about this, but I don't know who else to talk to, right? Like, you're the one, you might be the one or the only person that they feel safe enough to talk to.
Yeah.
And you bring shame into that conversation, man. And it, like, first of all, they're never going to trust you to talk to you again. Second of all, they're going to get stuck in that loop. They're already filled with shame. I'm not going to compound on it. It's like, they already carry all the shame. Whenever I have somebody call me and they're like, hey, dude, I slept with this girl, or like, you know, I gave into pornography last night. I'm like, here's the thing. First off, like, thank you for telling me. Second, do not let shame in. Because shame will sit there and keep you in the spiral of like, I can't believe I did that. Woe is me. But it's like, you have to get to this mental position, like this tactical position of like, I am victorious and freed from this thing. By the blood of Jesus, I am free from this area of life. And I will not carry shame, because for me to carry shame means I have to set down the forgiveness that I think the Lord has given me, right? Like, I can't carry them simultaneously. I have to set shame down. I have to pick up forgiveness and righteousness, and say, like, the Lord has redeemed me, and I will, like, live from a position of victory. But if you're carrying shame, you're just like, it's so heavy and it weighs on you so much, you're not going to be able to function. So I'm not going to compound shame on them. That's a terrible idea. Now, I'll tell them, like, hey, that's kind of a dumb idea, you know? Like if it's a repetitive thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, if somebody says, like, yeah, I slept with my girlfriend last night again, I'm going to be like, dude, like or like I stole again, right? I'm like, your heart's really callous towards this, right? I'm gonna thump him. I'm like, you're acting like an idiot. You know what the word says. You know what the Bible says. You've been advised what's true. And you've been offered really good advice and you ignored it. It's like you're setting yourself up for like a really tough life. And I'll thump them with it. Start stirring up that conviction where it's like, oh shoot, this is serious. But if they come with that mentality of like, hey, I'm really broken and sad that I did this, I understand that.
Yeah.
And I've been there. So it's like, I'm not going to unload shame on it, But I've been on the other side where, I was so calloused towards something that I was like, whatever. And my cousin or my dad or my mentor in life, whatever it was at the time, was like, dude, you are really going to be screwed over if you keep doing this in life. It's like, okay, well, let me just have that reality check really quick and get serious about it. Mm-hmm. That's not shame, that's love.
Yeah. So you beat porn.
With a big stick.
How'd you do it?
I had 2 battles with it. One was, let's see, sophomore to junior year of high school. I was, struggling with it. And there was a guy, his name was Isaac Johnson. He was in Crosswalk in my high school ministry. And, this is like, 2013, 2012, 2013. And, like iPhones were still just a rage. And my aunt's calling me 3 times in a row.
That go ahead.
Something
we'll take serious. A break right now. I have, through the power of editing, through the power of editing, so you beat porn.
Yeah, I did. There's 2 bouts with it for me. Sophomore year to junior year of high school, and then freshman year of college into like sophomore-ish year of college, somewhere in there. So it was like 2 years, and then I had a really good friend and brother through Crosswalk, which was the ministry that I was a part of in high school. Yep. That was in the same boat as me. His name was Isaac Johnson. And he was like, dude, I'm so sick of this. I don't know how to beat it. I don't know how to do whatever. And so we were just like on it with each other. And so we basically just kind of started this competition between each other where we text each other every day, keep up on each other, and just say like, hey, I made it through the day, or I slipped up or whatever. And we'd hammer on each other with like, better. Going back to that like no shame thing, but like also pushing each other to stay sharp on it. Like, dude, like you're better than this. You know what the word says. You know what this is grieving the Lord and it's destroying your body. And in that accountability and that pushing and competition with one another, I was able to get free from it for an entire year. Like all of a sudden I remember that like 1 month period where I was like, okay, I made it 1 month, but I was like still struggling. And then I made it 3 months and I was like, okay, this is like a big leap, but it's easy to fall back into. And I made it 6 months. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm kind of cool, right? Like I'm getting this figured out, but it's still like in the back of your mind. And then I remember getting to that 1 year marker and I was just like, I really feel like I got a good hold on this thing. And at that rate or at that time is when I was like, dude, I was graduating high school, wasn't going to be around Isaac nearly as much anymore. We'd always text each other and like stay in touch, but that relationship just kind of fizzled out because as you got distanced from it, you felt like it wasn't as pertinent and demanding of your time and attention to stay focused on, right? So I kind of cut away that relationship with Isaac, not intentionally, just fizzled out. We went our separate ways, didn't see each other on a weekly basis anymore. And I didn't stay sharp on like my daily grind, my daily accountability, my daily focus on just like I'm free from this, right? I allowed myself to slowly slip back into it, right? Taking a little bit longer to scroll through things on my phone and not look away. Not checking my eyes when I'm looking at things that I'm not supposed to. Slowly over time, you start thinking, you get a couple late nights in there, and like you just slowly slip back into it, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're deep into this issue again. You're like, how the heck did I get here? Right? And it's like the window's back wide open, and you're just like, it's even harder, right? Like you pick up right where you left off, and you're like, what the heck? So I was stuck in that for a good while longer. I think another like 9 months to a year I was struggling there. And, that's when I started dating this gal. And, I thought, well, if I have this, like if I just, have it secretly, it's not going to affect her, right? Like I know better than to go there with her because, that's real life and this is just fake over here, right? I had like that whole lie going in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great play. Doesn't work. It spilled completely over. Like I think I dated this gal for probably 9 months, and about 3 into it, like I had trained my brain when that switch got turned on that it's like you just go and satisfy that, right? And so when all of a sudden I have this like real life thing in front of me that has direct ramifications, consequences, impact, I can see the effects of what I'm doing impact her. It's like I didn't have the ability anymore. I trained my brain to say like, well, when I get to that point with my lust, it's like you just give in, right? Slowly over time, you desensitize yourself to like the impacts and the consequences of how she reacts to it, and next thing you know, like that's how you start a sexual relationship with somebody that you're not supposed to.
If I might interject,
yeah, go ahead.
I find that interesting because in having listened to people who have been in porn for a long time, or like they've been addicted to it.
Yeah.
Usually what they say is that they'll like have sexual encounters with real women and it just, they can't do it.
Yeah.
Because they've been in porn for so long. So I find it interesting that you have had the opposite experience.
Yeah. I mean, so for me it was like, I was living in this fantasy world, right? Of this unreal, like there wasn't this tangible thing. There was still so much unknown out there. Mm-hmm. And so when the reality got in front of me, it was this like frontier where I was like, this is all new, right? I've only ever seen this and I've only ever like been aware of it. But then it got in front of me and it's like, okay, well, inherently, like the male instinct in you says, go like discover, explore, learn, expand your capacity and horizon. That's not an excuse to go there with somebody, but that's like the drive in you, right? That's like, oh, there's a button I haven't pushed, there's a door I haven't opened, there's a hill I haven't climbed, or a tree I haven't conquered, whatever it is. And then you boil it down to just basic instinct, and it's like, well, it goes to that, right? So if you're not keen enough, I talk about this a lot with like young men that are going into relationships, saying like, hey, you have to have an exit strategy on how to get yourself out of these situations before you get in that mental space, because like your innate instinct will take over and kick in, and like you'll be somewhere in the back of your brain screaming stop, 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 and the Holy Spirit will be saying, this is wrong, but your heart rate is so high and the prefrontal cortex is so gone that you just physically don't even know where to begin to stop. But also you get the second of like clarity, like the split second where you're just like run. And if you have that moment to run, like take it, and then like just slam the door, walk out, and never come back. Better than that is saying, hey, I'm not going to be alone in a room with a girl. I'm not going to be alone in a room with my phone. I'm not going to set myself up in a position where I know that I'm going to go over the edge, because once I get there, I know how much harder it is to say no. Mm-hmm. So that's what it was for me at the time. But like once I started going down that road and crossing the line, dude, like the effects only got amplified. I'd become callous to this pornography issue, but now that it was spilling over and affecting somebody else like deeply that I cared about, it was tearing me up. Yeah. Like I saw the way it affected her, and I saw the way that it was like, eating away at like who I was. And so when everything fully kind of crescendoed and like started falling apart in my life because I just kept giving into this and pushing the boundaries that much farther, it's like the only thing left was for me to have a kid. It's like that's the ultimate like, consequences are good and bad, but like, you have a consequence of a kid in a relationship, and in a marriage relationship, it's amazing. The consequences outside of it is like the ramifications are brutal, So it's like, that's really all I had left to do. And it's like, before I got to that kind of consequence, I recognized like, this is terrible. Like, I need to completely reroute, right? And that's when I got everything under control. I got my crap together. I got mentors. I got discipled. I spent time with the Lord and re-softened my heart towards all those things. And, I remember there was a season in that when it's like, somebody bring up pornography, and I would go off. I'd be like, how the heck could you even think about it? Like, I would just get so mad, just start screaming at people. Like, how could you give into that? Do you not understand how like evil it is and how bad it is and what's fueling it? And they would just be like, whoa, dude, settle down. And I'm like, but you don't understand how brutal this is for your life. And what I learned in that is like because I saw it for what it really was, I developed this intense hatred for it, and it became that much easier to avoid it. So it's like, now when I think about, the industry, and when I think about the actual, like, the websites and everything, there's just this deep, like, innate hate in me for it, where it's just like, it's nothing but pure evil in my head. And because I've suffered the effects of it. And then the people that are stuck in it, there's nothing but deep, like, people that are truly stuck, I just have this deep sympathy and compassion for them, saying, like, you don't understand how brutal this is for you. Like, you have no idea how this is impacting your body, how the way you think. You talk about, like, your ability to interface and connect with, like, a real woman or your wife or whatever it may end up being, like, that it's destroying that as well. It's like, you don't realize how irresponsible you're being with somebody that you don't even know yet because of what you're doing, like, that you think is just on your own secretly. Like, those are just some of the real world. FightTheNewDrug.com or FightTheNewDrug.org, like, breaks down the chemical or the chemistry behind pornography, the social, like, struggles behind it, the neurological, like, and biological breakdowns of it. They just focus on, like, all these things that, like, say, and they're a secular company that says, like, here's why it's bad. It's a wonderful resource. FightTheNewDrug.org. Check it out.
All right.
There's my porn rant.
Why does it matter so much that we beat porn? I mean, you touched on it a little bit. Go more in depth. Because it's this harmless thing, right?
No. I mean, like, that's how the world portrays it, right? Like, there's in the classroom they teach, like, it's healthy, because what they're saying is, like, this is on the biological standpoint, or it's like, it's healthy to have, like, this sexual lifestyle, right? Like, you are designed with this testosterone build and, like, all this endorphins in you, and it's like, it's an innately ingrained instinct in you to reproduce. Like, it's across the spectrum. Every animal, everything has it, right? So, people in society looks at it as like this, well, you're supposed to be doing this anyway, but, like, to do it, it's good for your body, it's healthy for your body. So to do it without consequence of, like, having children and, like, bearing your life down and blah, 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 like, you should just watch porn. Well, it's like, it becomes so blown out of proportion where, one, it's like the whole, like, sexual encounter. I'm not married. This is coming from the perspective of learning from other people, married couples that do it well, and people that have done it wrong, and, like, how it impacts their life, right? I'm conglomerating all this information.
Yeah.
When done correctly, any kind of sexual encounter is meant to glorify and worship the Lord. It's supposed to be between one man and one woman. And when you do it, there's something that happens that you might be able to explain better than me, where it's like you have this emotional and spiritual connection with that person that actually worships the Lord. And it brings you together in such a way that it begins to mirror how God actually interfaces and, like, relates to you and how he feels towards you and, like, the bond that he wants to have with you, right? And it's supposed to just be that, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you take it and you step outside of the marriage covenant and you pervert it to just be with any, like, even just sleeping around, right? To be with any person, right? You're crossing covenant with that person every time you sleep with them. And all your goodness and all their goodness, like they interchange, and then all your demons and all their demons, they interchange, and all the baggage and the luggage, and you do that multiple times, and all of a sudden you're taking out all this stuff that, like, you think you're just sleeping with somebody, but like you're taking on a ton of spiritual weight that you don't understand, and you're building these connections and like building all these like ties with somebody, right? So when you do that on a level with pornography, where it's like there's this person that is most likely statistically in sexual trafficking somewhere on the other side of the world, that's probably addicted to drugs, and that's why they're still in the industry, that is doing this and being like whored out for whatever reason so that somebody else can make money, and you're fueling that industry, right? I can't remember how many billion-dollar industry the porn industry is, but it's like massive. And you're teaching all these people like how to do a sexual relationship wrong. Like there's nothing in, I've never seen a respectable porno. Like it sounds so weird coming out because you're just like, well, duh, like what do you mean respectable? Well, it's not possible. I've never seen like the beauty of what the Lord created, because all of a sudden you're bringing in this third party of lust. You know, it's all formulated and built on the foundation of lust, and it's wrong. And when you're teaching people how to, you know, view any kind of sexual activity through the eyes of lust rather than love, you're teaching them wrong. And we have a whole generation that's hooked on it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's hooked on this lust idea, and nobody knows how to love each other. Nobody knows how to stay monogamous or loyal to one another, because they're either physically like cheating, like out in other beds, or, you know, their minds are thinking of other women and lusting after them, or thinking of other men and lusting after them, and perverting what's actually acceptable to do, you know, and what's okay and what's right and what's wrong. And then you start bringing like, inherently, anybody I know that has a pornography problem all of a sudden gets to this point where they're like, I'm watching stuff that I never thought was even possible, and I'm seeing things that are so perverted that are like I don't know what's okay and not okay to do with my wife anymore, or my husband. And it's like, that's scary, right? Like if that's the standard, right? It's twisted and it's perverted and it's built on lust. Where when you look at like how the Bible defines it, it's like, hey, one man and one woman have eyes for each other, and in the covenant of marriage, they worship the Lord with what they do, and they do it guilt-free, with their consciences clean, and the fruit of that is an offspring that also reciprocates that kind of, and like, you know, they reciprocate themselves. They begin to recreate themselves, because all of a sudden the fruit of that is offspring that they have this immense love for, and all of a sudden they get a new perspective of who the father is, because they look at this person that's helpless and can give them nothing. My cousin just had his first kid, and he's enamored with her. Like, he just stares at her and he goes, I have nothing but immense love for this thing that can give nothing back to me. And I will lay down everything I have to make sure that she's provided for. And he's like, and that's how Jesus looks at me. You know? And so when you look at that process and how that's supposed to be laid out and done, it is just so gorgeous. Okay, all of a sudden I have this person that I'm intimately involved with and absolutely love, and have this perspective on like what true intimacy with the Lord looks like, or a better perspective. And the fruit of that is an increasing love for something that is not, it's unconditional. Like it doesn't have any strings attached to it, right? And all of a sudden you learn more about who God is and like what the Father feels for you. That is a beautiful thing. And then you pervert it, and then it's like, well, I can just get whatever I want, self-centered. I'm the beneficiary of all of this. And then it's like, and then you have this huge divorce rate and this huge issue of like, well, he doesn't know how to do this for me, or he doesn't know how to serve me. All he wants is the X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's all he's ever been trained to do in his life. And like, coming from the male perspective, we've only taught males how to receive what they want rather than lay down to give, to serve. And it's like, that's not masculine. Masculinity is selflessness. And at its root, pornography is nothing but lust and selfishness. And it's like promoted as this great thing. It's like bullcrap. It's terrible. It's going to destroy your life. That's why I hate it so much. you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But getting free from it, man, like, you know, just, it was a grind for a while, but like, I remember it was a couple years after I was like free. I wasn't watching anymore. I didn't have the weight of it on my shoulders and on my mind all the time. My mind wasn't like cluttered up, and I was able to look at my friends and these gals that I went to church with, like, for the first time, and be like, that is my sister, that is a daughter of God. I could view them cleanly, and I just had like nothing but appreciation and love and protection for them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to make sure you're provided for, whether it's like, you know, just you need a friend, or you need somebody to rely on, or you need somebody to come change your tire, whatever it is. It's like, I want to be a safe place for you. And consequently, all of a sudden I had like just this like really cool group of girls that I really held and viewed as sisters. And, you know, I started hearing stuff like, I don't know, there's just like, there's something about you and Jordan, or you and Aaron, that like, I really feel safe around you. And it's like, I was like the first dude that they ever encountered like that, right? And they'd be like 25, 26, 27, 28, 19, whatever it was. Like, for years, they never felt safe around a guy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's not good. But for the first time, they had that. And like, I got to be the one to receive that compliment. It's like, man, dude, I just sit there and cry. Like, I'm not a big cry. Well, I'm crying more lately. I'm becoming a girl. Jesus is just working on me, man, and like, I'm just like bawling my eyes out at the dumbest things. But like, I just hear stuff like that, even when I wasn't like, even though I was like just stoic, I'd hear that and I just like tear up. I'm like, wow, because it just, like, I just felt the hurt in their voice when they said it. Like, I really feel like I can trust you. It's like,
yeah. This may sound really weird, but the other thing is, like, on top of being able to view them as sisters, it's just like, you can look at them and be like, wow, they're really beautiful. Yeah. And it's not a, I want to be with them thought. Mm-hmm. They're just beautiful.
Yeah. You can admire God's creation with a guilt-free conscience. Mm. But God, you did good with that. Wow. You know?
Yeah.
So, that's been super cool, man. And, you know, that's just one of those things where, just going down the theme of, in discipline there's freedom, right? I discipline myself to say, no, I'm not going to do this thing that the world says is good or okay. And all of a sudden I live this free lifestyle that I'm not in bondage to it anymore. And it's way more fun, you know? And it's like, I'm allowed to, you know, be around any person at any time. It's like, I don't have this like crippling anxiety, like, oh my gosh, am I going to try to do something? Or like, you know, like, what happens if this happens? Just like, no, I have my wherewithal about me, and I know, like, my boundaries, my path is clear, and I just get to run the play. It's amazing. Yeah. So,
nothing like it.
Yeah. And then, you know, in all that, man, like, I think our group of guys and gals in our ministry has just been so entertaining over the years, because, you know, it's not just a Sunday gathering where we get together and worship the Lord and then we go home. Or it's not just a Thursday night thing where, you know, we sit around and sing Kumbaya, or even worship the Lord like crazy, and like really encounter him and get rocked by him, and see people get healed and see people get like prophetic words. And we have this amazing culture of like God moving and doing miraculous things. And then outside of that, we're doing fun stuff like consistently. We play a lot.
We do play.
Yeah. And, you know, whether it be stuff for the guys, like we're going on ruck marches and like pushing ourselves, or we have this amazing rope swing that we've put up over the years that has been one of the best tools in ministry. It's like a 35-foot rope swing into a quarry. You have like about a 30-foot drop if you do it right, and you can rip some amazing backflips. And you know, we have people coming up left and right that are Christian, non-Christian, like in lost places, completely stoned or hammered, and like we get to share the Lord with them and like let them have a fun time. And we're pushing the boundaries of like comfortability and acceptability and culture, but just having fun, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree. You remember Peter Kaiser? Yeah. So one of the things, as I've been mentoring him and working with him, one of the things that he remarked to me after he got out of a lot of the stuff that he was trapped in was, he's like, I really like being around you guys because you know how to have fun sober.
Yes.
He's like, I've never, once I got into alcohol and into weed, I always had to have them to have fun.
Right.
And so he would say the most interesting thing about this whole journey, at this point anyway, is learning how to have fun without being intoxicated.
That's interesting.
And we do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah. I mean, between like backpacking trips and going rock climbing at the ledges and, shoot, it might seem like immature things sometimes. Like, I remember one year we just went out and built a snow fort. And it's like, it was harmless, it was easy, it was fun, it was guilt-free, and like we just laughed our heads off. I think it was just 2 weeks ago I just got in trouble. Last week I got in trouble for something I did 2 weeks ago where we had a big conference at our church. And like after the conference was done that night, it was a 2-day conference and they rented a bunch of bouncy houses. And like after the first night, there was a handful of us guys that stayed behind and we just like partied up. We had like we call them Ferda Fridays. Ferda. And about 12:30 at night, you could hop on the security footage from the church and see 4 young guys dragging a bouncy house down the hallways of the church into the sanctuary. And like, it was like, well, the unknown, right? Like, hey, what would happen if we dragged the bouncy house into the church sanctuary and like jumped off the balcony? And we're like, well, it's possible. And it was a challenge, right? It's like, okay, now you got to drag this 1,500-pound bouncy house down the hallways, and it's like, we got a big church, so it's like a 500-yard drag, and you're heaving and hoeing and getting them through the doors, and okay, well, where do we jump from? And just, I don't know, something to pass the time, right? It's harmless. We assume nobody's going to get hurt. Like, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, technically, no, shouldn't do it, but there's part of me that really wanted to hear, like, if we did get caught, there's a part of me that really wanted to hear out of my youth pastor's mouth come, why did you guys put a bouncy house in the sanctuary to jump off the balcony? I wanted to hear that, like, because I thought it would be funny. And it was. We did get caught, and we did get reamed out, and we laughed through the whole story. Anyways, it's just doing stuff like that where, okay, you're in the church, you're involved, you're with these guys like thick as thieves, right? You're doing ministry together and seeing young men get raised up and seeing people get healed and ministered to by the Lord. But it's like, once again, the reason that I avoided it for so long is because I was like, it's not going to be fun. That was the biggest thing in the back of my head. I don't want to be a Christian because it's not going to be fun. Or I don't want to surrender my life because it's not going to be fun. And consequently, now that I'm like in love with Jesus and consumed with his presence and fixated and like learning what it looks like to have the discipline to be in a really good relationship with him, simultaneously I'm over here, it's like trying to show these young men in the youth group that I'm involved in, saying like, hey, this is so great and tastes so good and your lifestyle will be so fulfilled. Don't forget that you can have so much fun, right? Jesus went hiking with the disciples. He went fishing with the disciples. They went like, all sorts of different things, like sailing. They like went camping all the time. They're always eating meals together. They're just out in the wilderness, like running around like goons on mission. They were like intentionally doing things all the time, but they had loads of fun. You got to think about the conversations while they're hiking and walking up mountains and building structures to be able to, have meetings and theaters or whatever they were doing. Like, they did laugh a lot, right? You have to assume they did. Like, I don't know if you watched The Chosen, but like The Chosen has a very good depiction of like, they were just guys. They were at heart. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple books. One of them is Wild at Heart, that just really talks about like getting that like male itch scratched. In the context that you and I are talking about right now, like, there's this drive and this desire in you to go out and conquer and fight for things and like get your wiggles out. It's like we have all this testosterone, use it, and we have this inherent like ability that we want to scrap with each other and fight and like just overcome, because we're designed to overcome. Mm-hmm. We're designed to like step up to the roles that are put in front of us and overcome. Now, most guys get stuck in this lifestyle of like, here's another rabbit trail. Most guys get stuck in this lifestyle. I think it's Thoreau that talks about most men live quiet lives of desperation, where it's just like they want to do so much more, but they're tied down to a responsibility of just minimal. Like, I just have to get a little. Like, I just have to make sure that everything's maintained and in order, and like nothing's crazy. It's like they're just strapped to this lifestyle where it's like it's not intense, it's not demanding, it's not hard. It's just like they're not growing. They're just doing the motions, right? So I want to show these young men that yes, you can live this fulfilled lifestyle with Jesus, but that doesn't mean you have to have a stick up your butt 24/7. Like, cut loose and have fun. You have these desires, and I call them my wiggles. Like, I got to get my wiggles out, dude. Like, get them out. Go and conquer. Go and fight. Go and compete with one another. Like, I don't care. Scrap with one another. Like, when I got young men, like, fighting, if I think it's, like, just play fun and they're scrapping, let them go. You know? It's fun. It's entertaining, but so many people in our culture and society say, like, no. Like, you have to be a good boy. Like, look at the girls. Act like the girls. Like, they're calm, they're nice, they're easy to maintain. It's like, God, that's not how we're built. We can't do that.
Yeah.
So, it's that balance between, like, be disciplined, meekness, right? Like, all power, all authority, all intensity, under control. Like, teaching that is hard because, like, you have these kids that are just going, like, off the walls. But it's like, when you can boil that down and direct that, it's so effective. But, you know, just laugh along the way. You really just got to learn how to laugh. Have joy. In the fullness, or in the presence of God is the fullness of joy. You know?
Yeah. You're a pretty fearless person, too. You don't have a whole lot of inhibitions, as we've been discussing and discovering. You don't have a whole lot of inhibitions.
I'm being so tame. Yeah.
How do you cultivate more of that in your life?
I think in my personal life?
In your personal life, how do you cultivate just not being scared of doing stuff and getting out there and doing what you got to do?
Men do hard things. One of my favorite sayings is embrace the suck. And like, there's so many things that like they're scary. Like, you don't want to do them. Now, I'm not saying go out and be like a full-on moron and like do a backflip off of a 2-story building. Like, you recognize you have to be able to weigh the cost of like the risk of what's going to happen, right? But like, I remember, this is why having a young, like a good friend is really good. Because I remember my cousin Jordan and I, right? Like, I bring up Jordan a lot because it's like we've been in each other's lives since we were 2 and 3 years old, and we've been basically inseparable since then. And so it's like, you know, now we're in ministry together. We went through thick and thin together. We're starting a business together. We're starting a church together. All this stuff is culminating. It's like, so I've just always been there. We've always pushed each other, right? So you think about like a bunch of guys hanging out, and it's like you're on the edge of something, right? The edge of a pond, the edge of a cliff, the edge of a skate ramp. You know, just do it. You get a bunch of guys that are like pushing a little bit more. No balls, you won't. Come on. And you know, eventually you just build up that courage of like, I'm just gonna do the thing that scares me, right? And on the other side of it, whether you're broken or okay or terrified or whatever it is, you did it. And you felt that rush of adrenaline and that feeling of terror and that, like, and you conquered it, right? And you had the mental, like, fortitude to be like, I won, right? And then you go do it again. And you do it again, and you do it again. It's like, I think of, you know, simple things like doing a backflip on a trampoline or front flip on a trampoline. It scares and terrifies so many people. Just do it. Like, and you're probably going to fail. You're probably going to hurt yourself. You're probably going to, like, it's not going to be comfortable. But you have to get yourself in an uncomfortable situation to learn how to, 1, navigate through it, and 2, how to conquer it. So I intentionally put myself in places that are scary, knowing I'm not going to like it, just to prove to myself and really nobody else that it's like, I'm not going to be owned by that.
Glory. One of my I'm trademarking this saying, so don't go putting it in a book or anything.
We'll see.
Comfort is the great killer of greatness.
I like that.
And I mean, it's kind of true. You stay where you're comfortable, you'll never be great.
I agree with that.
You'll never do anything great. You have to get out there and you have to get uncomfortable. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. I discovered that I could swim across a lake with Tyler Potter. He and I just wanted to go out and take a little cold dip one lovely April day. So we go out, we take a dip, and he looks across this lake that we're in, and he sees the opposite shoreline, and he's like, we're going to swim across. And I'm like, what? And he starts going. He completely ignores me, and I'm like, okay. So I guess we're swimming. Mind you, it's April, so the water is freezing cold.
34 degrees.
It's freezing cold. And we're swimming across, and I'm like, I've never gone that distance before. And I'm halfway in the middle, and I'm like, man, I'm getting tired. So I look back at the shore I just came from, and I discover I am in the middle of the lake. And freaking Tyler is in front of me 20 feet, and he's also tired. So if I drown, if I can't swim anymore, he cannot save me, and I will die. And I was like, oh my. So I swam, and I was tired. But man, we got done, and we were like, that was amazing. I can swim across a lake, apparently.
Did I tell you I mapped that lake out? It's a quarter mile.
Oh, is it? From the two shores? Quarter mile? That's a little less far than I was expecting, but quarter mile still.
You tell somebody you swam across a freezing lake a quarter mile, they'll be impressed.
Yeah.
So it's funny you bring that up because I have that story in the back of my mind because it was a year later at 7 a.m.
Yep. That we went out.
You and I are wading down in the water. And oh my gosh, I remember telling my mom the night before. I'm like, yeah, BG and I are gonna go swim across the lake tomorrow. She's like, Reed, hypothermia is a real thing. I'm like, yeah, Mom, we'll be swimming. It's fine. Like, it's not that far. And so I remember, like, you know, I'm an all out kind of guy. So it's like there's two ways of doing things. Like, you don't do it or you just do it all out, right? And so I remember you and I walking up to the edge of this lake at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, "Yep, this is doable. We've done it before. It's fine." I'm like, "Cool. I'm athletic. I'm smart. I can handle things that suck. I'm doing it." So the second my foot touched the water, I knew I wouldn't turn. Like, I just wouldn't stop. So I just run straight into the water and I start swimming right away, all out, giving it everything. And you yell something, and I didn't hear it because I'm like too busy, you know, owning this challenge. And I make it probably 150 yards. And I'm like, man, I'm getting tired. And I look back and I realize I'm only 150 yards. I'm like, oh boy. Okay. So I start swimming a little bit farther. I make it about a third of the way across. And I yell back to you, I'm like, man, I'm getting pretty tired. And you go, yeah? That's why I told you to wait and acclimate. I was like, yeah, I can't breathe. You know, because like I can only get like, you know, 80% lung capacity because the water's just so cold and my chest is tightening up. And I'm like, well, I'm a third of the way across and I'm like battling inside internally. Like, if I turn back now, I'll make it back to shore and like I'll be okay. I'm like, well, if I'm only a third of the way there, like I can get from a third of the way to half the way. Like, that's not that bad. And so I'm swimming and I get halfway across, and I remember also yelling back to you, how deep is this lake? Because all I could think about is the distance behind me, the distance in front of me, and the distance below me. And you just yell back, I don't know. Because like for some reason in me, I thought, well, maybe it's only like 8 feet deep. And that just made me feel a little bit better. But it's like, no, it's a 40-foot deep lake. And I'm like,
oh, it is a 40-foot deep lake?
I'm assuming 30, 40. Like all I could think about is like, okay, that's enough distance that if I go down, I'm done. Like, I can't touch and bounce off the bottom. I'm like, this is real. So, like, time and space became a very, like, big reality for me in that moment. And I remember thinking, okay, if I can get from a third, I can get to half. And if I can get to half, I just got to do that again. And so I pushed through, and I got halfway out in the middle of this lake, and I'm on my back kicking. And all I can think about is that cold water rushing over my head and that distance below me and how much I hate where I was at that moment. And I hear my mom's voice in the back of my head, Reed, hypothermia is the real thing. And I'm arguing with my mom out in the middle of the lake. Mom, it's not the hypothermia, it's the distance. I'm like, it's not about me freezing, it's about me drowning. And, I'm a lean guy. I sink like a rock. Like there's no floating in me. And, it took every stroke in that lake. I'm praying to the Lord, and I'm like, Jesus, you're good to me, but if I just ended this too soon, I am so sorry. Because I'm going down. I'm sinking hard. And I'm having this moment with the Lord where
man.
It was do or die.
Yeah. It is do or die.
It was one of those moments where it's I've never really come that face to face with I'm aware of how easy I can die right now. And I was so pissed. I was so mad. It's I hate the fact that I did this way. And but it's there was no time to freak out. There was no time to regret. It was just do another stroke. Do another stroke. Don't panic. Breathe. Do another stroke. And I just had to do that for the next 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I made it to the other side, and I laid up on that shore, and I was like, gosh, I hated that so much. But did it. Mm-hmm. It was freaky. But I liked it.
Yep.
Yeah. Went to church that morning. They're like, what'd you do this morning? Why are you wet? And I was like, I almost died. They're like, what? I was like, yeah, it was pretty close.
Indeed.
Yeah. Stupid swim.
We're doing it again in about a month. Or at least I am. I'm doing it again in about a month.
Mentally preparing. Dude, at least if I die right now, I just increased my life insurance policy to $500,000. So,
good deal.
Yeah, Jordan will appreciate that.
Yeah, he will.
Nothing says sorry about dying on you wiping your tears with $500,000. So, anyway, you just got to do hard things.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Reed, what is the number one thing that you think young men need to learn in this generation?
That is a great question. I think young men need to learn what masculine identity in Christ looks like. He wasn't tame, but he was disciplined. He knew who he was through his father. He had a good relationship with his father, and he mimicked him, and he represented him well. And Jesus was the stud of studs. He was so masculine, and he carried himself in a way that was very stern, but so tender to the Holy Ghost. And I think if more young men learned how to hear the voice of the Father and allowed that to infiltrate their life and affect who they are and speak to their identity, that allowed them to live in that, within that boundary, we wouldn't have a masculine identity crisis anymore. We wouldn't have any identity crisis, right?
Yeah.
And young men need to know how to hear the voice of the Father, because then they're not judging or gauging what masculinity is based off of what the world says, or what Bruce Willis says, or Andrew Tate, or their father, even if he was a good father or a bad father, or their mother, or what all the feminists say, or what the Menonists say. It's no, I know inherently the traits that God has put in me to protect, to provide, to be selfless, to love deeply, to lead, to defend, to have discipline and set the standard, to hear from the Lord and lead and give order over my household. All that would be satisfied if young men truly learned how to hear the voice of the Father.
Yeah. That's all I've got for today. Gentlemen.
Cool microphone.
I agree. It's a pretty neat microphone. Gentlemen, you got to pursue the Lord relentlessly. I will say it every single podcast as my outro. You got to pursue the Lord relentlessly. Life in its fullest is found there. You cannot find it anywhere else. Bits and pieces, maybe, scraps, but not the fullness, not the full meal. Pursue the Lord relentlessly. You will not be disappointed. We love you guys. Thank you for listening in. We'll see you in the next one.